recording this whole time. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about one thing that so many people ask me. I have designers reaching out wondering what it takes to ace the UX interview. Well, stay tuned and I will tell you all the secrets from a person who does interviews. Alrighty, so you're just starting out or you're a few years into the UX industry and you're wondering, what does it take to ace that interview? You've worked hard, you've worked on your portfolio. I'm gonna do a video about that soon, about what to include in your portfolio. But let's say you have your portfolio, you're happy with it. What are the types of things you need to remember in your interview and things that you need to come prepared for? So, number one. So what employers usually look for is your design process. And basically what that means is not a regurgitation of what you learned in school, but rather how you approach problem solving. And so essentially the design process is pretty much asking, how do you tackle problems? Both from a user perspective, a design perspective, and a business or technical perspective. And for those out there who are just starting in their first job, it's okay to admit that you don't have experience directly, but you can also use any other example of how you tackled a problem to exemplify what your design process is. For example, you can say, I usually start with some research. I do Googling. I try to, train myself in the subject at hand as much as possible. Then I'll move forward with a sketch or, talking to more stakeholders. And so what employers are really looking for is basically, how do you think? How do you methodically lay out an attack plan when a problem is presented in front of you? Number two, problem solving. So we want to know how you go about problem solving. Do you collaborate with other people? Do you like figuring things out on your own and then asking for help when necessary? We love to understand how you attack a problem, and this goes back to process, is how did you not only conquer or solve a problem, whether related to work or even when it comes to interpersonal relationships. How did you deal? How did you conflict resolve? And that's the number two thing that the employer is looking for when they are interviewing you as the design candidate. Number three, how do you handle pressure? So depending on the environment that you're looking to be in, whether it be in a corporation, a startup, a mid-sized company, there's going to be varying degrees of pressure. And again, if this is your first job, it's okay. You have handled pressure in other areas of life. You can talk about a school deadline or group projects, or maybe a previous job in another environment, whether it be fast food, retail, where there was pressure, as an example to display how you handle pressure. So what a lot of people use is STAR is acronym for the situation. So it's basically a framework in which you lay out and communicate how you handled a certain situation. So S stands for the situation. You lay out what happened, what were sort of context setting, who is there, who was involved. T stands for task. So task is basically what you were tasked with. A is the action that you took in light of the situation and the task that you were given, and the results. So basically, you did a thing, what happened, and then what, and what was the result? Most often, we don't really care about what the situation was and what you were tasked to do with. We mostly focus on the action and the result. I would say the result is really important in outlining because it basically shows us that you are able to drive a certain result based on everything that you had to go through. And that's a really great way to gauge whether a candidate is a good fit for the company and the way that he or she thinks will contribute to the greater company as a whole. Number four, how well do you work with others? So again, you might not have experience in a corporate or even a professional environment within a design team. You can most definitely bring up examples in other workplaces. So don't shy away from, bringing up past examples, whether it be in school or other work environments. We just want to know from the employer's standpoint if this person is thrown into a team with differing personalities, how do you handle that? How do you handle someone that might not have the same working style as you, or even communication style? One big thing that employers look for when they're interviewing candidates is how well do you play with others, because design is not a one-person sport. It's definitely a team sport, and you know, some days you might not get along with certain people, but how do you handle and how do you push past different personalities? Number 5, your character. Who are you and what defines you? What has shaped your experience? And I find more and more companies are interested in investing in people rather than skills, because skills are something that you can definitely train through the job, but a person's character is very solidly built beforehand, or not. And I would say throughout the past examples of what is your process, how do you handle conflict, how do you handle working in a team, those are little glimpses of your character as a whole, but definitely bring personalities to the interviews, because essentially your manager is going to be interviewing you. And so that means your hobbies, your interests, those things are really important. And I would even say shy away from those interviews that don't ask, because you definitely are a person. You are a person bringing forth skills and interests and hobbies, and so it's great to be able to portray that as a full individual rather than just a person who is here to do a job and call it a day at the end of the night. Awesome. So with that said, that's 5 things that employers are looking for in you when you come to the interview. However, it's a double-sided market. You are looking for a job, so you're actually shopping for an employer as well. So you, as a potential employee, what do you need to bring to the interview process? Well, definitely answers for the past 5 points that I brought up. So make sure that you have a very concrete way of articulating your process, how you work, how you design. Secondly, how you handle pressure. So make sure you bring up examples, and using the STAR method, it can help you really lay out and articulate your story in a much more clear way. Any examples of how you worked with others, any conflicts that have come up, and as well as how you problem solve. So how do you actually tackle a problem and apply your design process to it? So those are things that you need to come prepared with. You also need to come prepared with research. And research is so utterly important, because that is the number one thing that you should be doing before the interview, is reading up on the company, if they're in the news, if they've had any major wins lately, if they have anything negative. Because at the end of the day, you are shopping for a potential manager, employer, as much as the company is looking for candidates to fill positions. It's very much a two-way street, and a lot of people forget this. A lot of people feel like coming out of school, I need to do whatever it takes to get that first job and land that first job. And you know what? It actually shows. So in a way, it's better to be choosy, because when you have boundaries, people respect it. If you come to the interview with questions ready about culture, about compensation, about vacation, and anything else that the company can do for you as a person, because yes, you are going to be working for the company, but it's a value exchange, and you have to ensure that value is not only measured against dollars, because money is a big part of a job and, you know, being employed, but it's also the people, it's also the sort of policies around the company, whether it be vacation, sick days, parental leave, benefits. Make sure you look at the whole picture and not just the dollar signs. Above all else, being able to answer the questions and making sure that you're asking really poignant questions yourself is being able to confidently communicate. And that is something that I know can be super tough, because you know, you're just new in the market and you're looking for your first job, or you haven't interviewed in a while, and so you know, that first interview out of the gate is really daunting. You want to make sure that you're, you know, impressing people, but at the same time, you have to be able to just walk in there and present yourself confidently. Fake it till you make it if you need to, because that actually will separate you from someone that is just sort of looking for the first job they can get their hands on. Interviewing is actually a muscle that you need to work on strengthening. And so it's definitely a tiring process because most interview processes are not just a single one and done. You'll most probably go through a few, whether that be the initial phone screen and then a chat with someone on the team, maybe a fellow designer, and then maybe a manager. And then personally, myself, I interviewed with the CEO because that was just the practice at our company. And so it was tiring and it was tough, but it does get easier as you take on more interviews, and sometimes you just have to apply for things that are maybe out of your area or range of expertise. It's okay. It's flexing that muscle of talking to someone and articulating, your own, what you can bring to the table. And lastly, practice. Practice, practice, practice. Practice in front of the mirror, practice with a friend, practice your answers. Say it over and over in your head, not to the point where it's rehearsed, because you wouldn't want to go to a meeting or an interview with cue cards and reading it. It needs to be organic, but the more that you hear yourself talking and the more that you hear yourself talking about your story, what your background is, all your experiences, it will become easier to actually hear yourself and then remember what you need to say in the interview when the pressure is on and your pits are sweating and your mouth is dry. I promise that the practice will help you a lot. And that is one thing that I remember doing really often is writing out the answers to the most asked questions. List out all the questions that potential employers might ask, write answers to them, and practice. Just keep practicing them until it becomes sort of second nature, ingrained in your mind, the stories, the examples that you want to bring up. And if you can come prepared to answer the 5 topics that I mentioned earlier in this video, these ones that I'm going to put up here, you will be set. But also remember to bring your confidence, and again, fake it till you make it. Go in there, say, I am great, I am good, I am worthy of this job, and asking those poignant questions about the company as a whole and their processes will make you a much more attractive candidate in your interview process. And at the end of the day, you can only prepare so much for an interview, and the rest just becomes your ability to think off the cuff and answer questions on your toes. So don't feel like you have to have the answers to everything. I know I had a curveball thrown at me in my previous interview where the CEO asked, "Why shouldn't we hire you?" And I was like, what? Anyways, let me know down below what the craziest or most interesting or the most curveball questions that you've been asked in an interview. I'd be interested to know. And all the best to everyone out there looking for their first job or looking to get back into the job market. Bye, be well.